We're outnumbered tonight.
You're with friends.
Good? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Design Advisory Panel meeting for May 13th. My name is Charles Carroll. I'm an architect and I'm chair of the committee. Just a quick reminder for those of you who don't know, this meeting is being live streamed and recorded for future reference, just so you know that you're on candid camera. We have an agenda for this evening, starting with calling the meeting to order, which I am doing now. Second item is adoption of the agenda. I don't think, well, does anyone have any items to add to the agenda? I can only see half the faces here, sorry. Lots of shaking heads, okay. So a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. All in favor? Thank you very much. And we have minutes from our last meeting on April 22nd. Are there any comments, questions, revisions, anything to do with the minutes from the last meeting? Seeing none, I will call for adoption of the minutes from the last meeting. All in favor? Excellent, thank you. Minutes are adopted. I will sign them off. And we have one presentation this evening for development permit application at 340 Campbell Street to be introduced by Lisa Brinkman.
Hello, everybody. As Charles mentioned, this is a development permit application for the property at 340 Campbell Street. The applicant is proposing to remove the building that's on the property to make way for a new 6-story multifamily building with 163 residential units. The property is zoned in the Downtown 3 Wallace zone and is within Development Permit Area 9 and within the Downtown Urban Design Plan. Both the General Development Permit Area Design Guidelines and the guidelines within the Downtown Plan apply to the proposed development. There are 3 variances proposed: building height from 14 meters to 18.82 meters, and a setback for the accessory building from 1.5 meters to 0 meters at the rear property line, and a small car parking variance is proposed from 40% small car spaces to 65% small car spaces. And with that, that's my short presentation.
Thank you. So we turn it over to the applicant, one of the many applicants on the screen. I'm not sure who's planning to do a presentation, but there we go. Dawn has started sharing a screen. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the panel being here on, it looks like a lovely afternoon, by the way. By the way, we do have a lot of people here, but they're not going to be speaking. It's the only one who will be speaking will be myself as the architect, Keith Ross, who is our landscape architect, and if required for any owner or operational questions, we have Mr. Paul Williams from the ownership team who could answer questions if you have questions of those kind of nature. But thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate the introduction as well. As you know, the tenure of this building is 100% market rent, so with a total of 163 units. All designed to encourage living and working in the downtown core as an urban experience. The building is reminiscent of buildings found in vibrant urban centers around the world, including locally here in Vancouver, but everywhere else. We are inspired first and foremost by the rich history of the site locale and of Nanaimo's urban and cultural past. That was one of our strongest design influences that led our team. And our reacquaintance with Nanaimo's origins as a vital industrial hub and an early urban center really gave us invigoration to the project. But additionally, the inspiration for us also came from the 6-story buildings of Houseman's Terrace and the Parisian streets. And so, though the principles of street-oriented buildings which have elevational control with proportions and the rhythms of the buildings and the building openings, where the doors, the windows, the bays, and in some parts of Paris where they use canopies, those kind of elements are all in very controlled manners. That, with the use of sort of solid urban material, often in Paris they would sort of use more sort of a cement or concrete approach. However, for ourselves, we are modifying that. And the other side of it is the inspiration is also with the architectural metals in the buildings of those particular cities, where the projections are often defined by open metal railings, and in the form of window boxes or short balconies. And those particular architectural items which add to the facade elements and often overhang the sidewalks in many ways. So these were the fundamental design principles which we sought to bring into Campbell Street. And so that's where we were as our inspiration. Contextually, you may know the site where we're adjacent to. We are at Campbell and Wallace at the intersection right here, with Wallace being a relatively flat-grade street and Campbell sloping up eastwards about 20 feet from our corner to the lane corner. To the north of us is the Tim Hortons site. It's kind of characterized by large surface parking and vehicle circulation. But it's important to note here on the Tim Hortons site that there's a fairly large slope, bermed grade that comes up from the slope parking area up to a retaining wall to that edge, to our northern edge of our site. And then to the south, there is some very lovely 2 to 3 story office buildings, which I think helps create a really nice strong corner to Campbell and Wallace here, and sets up a nice sort of street precedence that we're working with as well. To the west is the lane that runs north-south, and the lane is a dead-end lane. It sort of dead ends at this park over here. And then across the lane is the elementary school. I believe it's a French immersion school, but I may be wrong. But it's an old elementary school there, which is set up as the hillside goes up above our site. So this playground sits about a level higher than our site up here. The lane, it's important to understand the lane. The lane is only 18 feet wide from property line to property line, and the retaining wall from the school actually sits beyond the property line of their side. So the effective width is actually maybe even 16 feet from property line to edge of retaining wall up there. And then along Wallace on the other side are characteristically appear to be low one-story buildings. However, they tend to be, because of the slope, they tend to be fairly high faces towards the edge there. The vision of the area set forth by the city's Northgate area plan, which envisions new forms of development within, and the future for the NIMO to support its desired growth patterns. The principles of this particular diagram here, which is out of the Northgate area plan, are basically followed in our cross-sectional references over here. So the OCP, or the neighborhood plan, is looking for 6-story buildings. They have some dimensional information such as 19.7 meters. And so what we would envision is across the street to the north of us and then down Wallace is similar buildings of similar sizes that would basically be coming in. And so just the form of development that we would see would be happening in there would be to support the NIMO's area plan density and urban design goals for an improved street. And as it affects our site, we would be looking at, here we go. As it affects our site, on Wallace Street, the public realm will be improved to the area plan's desire with a new bike lane going along Wallace and an increased sidewalk at about 4.6 meters wide, which we are providing a 3-meter setback off of Wallace. And that particular sidewalk would sit within that 3-meter setback, 2.5 meters back in, which allows us some form of edge treatment along our Wallace Street edge. The additional sort of items that will be happening along Wallace Street would be a future rhythm of street trees that will come in, which we will work with engineering to determine how that comes about when they're prior to that it comes to us. And in contrast, Campbell. It's also important to note that we understand that no street parking would be along Wallace Street at this point. But in contrast, Campbell, being another supporting street, we additionally have a 3-meter setback along Campbell. And the street will allow street parking coming in at that point, and similarly we'll pick up on street trees as well. The site planning concept for the project, I'll just sort of quickly use this as an opportunity to show what's going on. Sorry, my apologies. Okay, there we go. The site planning concept for Wallace Street is pedestrian-oriented street views with the built form edges programming around the street for live work and live work to support the animation of Wallace Street. We do have a north lane over here and north driveway over here, which you'll see is set back from our north property line about 10 meters. This will allow for vehicle access that will come straight down here, and our vehicles will turn straight into the parkade, which will completely conceal the parking 100%. We also have our waste management concealed at the backside as well. And so what we are doing here is making sure that the street is not, the lane will not be loaded with vehicles and service vehicles that come about. And we've decided to do that, to choose livability more than density. If we were just to stretch out the building, we would actually get more density, but we actually wanted to choose more about livability and make a statement about streets. And further on, our internal streets, along Campbell, we would our live works will transition around the corner and then pause at our building entry over here. Our building entry will be level, right across with this large bay, and then make a transition right in the middle over here. And it's organized well to work off with the parking and the street parking that would be above. Along the west lane, I'm just going to drop back a little bit about here. Along the west lane, you'll notice that our building is also set back 10 meters. It's set back 10 meters for the abilities to be able to create opportunities for outdoor amenities along the lane. So we have a series of program elements such as urban agriculture, some seating areas, an amenity building which we will house outdoor barbecue facilities, and a child's play area, along with the trellis element that will connect the back side in there. And so, and with that, the central courtyard is really designed to allow for some open space for the tenants and for programming such as Tai Chi or yoga or those kinds of communal activities which can be conducive to community building. And overall, the massing of the 6-story building is designed to respond to the streets and to enhance livability for all the units, and thus the sort of U-shape happens for the building. At the very corner there, we have the view of Wallace Street here is essentially developed off of symmetrical axes. And at the very midpoint, you'll see that we've broken the mass of the building down and in the middle here to break the street wall and to provide a visual pause and reference point to the building. And overall, the effect is the 5-story shoulder of the building with a 6-story setback. That setback is set back 5 feet with an overhanging roof that comes along. Along the street, of course, we're trying to pick up the rhythm of facade openings, the bays, the Juliet balconies, the street canopies, just to give everybody sort of a sense of articulation amongst the building facade and the treatment along the edges of the site. In terms of architectural form, we are using brick as our primary material along the street and anywhere where there's sort of a public tactile level. So along Campbell Street, along Wallace, and our inside inner street as well. Above the brick will be a ceramic coated fiber cement board, which we're using which will have an integral color to it. And then the facade will be accented by the variety of flashings, Juliet balconies, the window frames, and the edges, all in a similar sort of black color. And we sort of feel the black color will be a unifying element amongst the light facade, the light colored facade elements and the wall surfaces, but also not compete with the accent of the wood elements, which is the street canopies and those other elements that are coming along with the experience of the building. And with that, so it is just basically to help build the characteristics of the complementary wood elements at the visual level of the building of the street. And I think with that, I think I'll just hand it over to Keith now to perhaps talk about the landscape character and form.
Okay, thank you, Don. I'm Keith Ross. I'm the landscape architect with Urban Solutions Architecture. This is the color landscape plan. And if we start along Campbell Street, where the building entry is, Campbell Street frontage includes, like as Don mentioned, the new sidewalk, city street trees on the boulevard. And then in the setback landscape area, we have a series of terraces stepping down the street. And in those terraces will be columnar deciduous trees, kind of a mixture of evergreen shrubs or tall shrubs, flowering shrubs, and ornamental grasses. as well as some boulders and gravel areas just within each terrace. So that's meant to bulk up that area with the nature and natural planting in front of the building facade facing south. Now along Wallace Street, it's more, let's say, urban streetscape feeling to that, as Don walked through the 3D part. Wallace Street frontage includes a new wide walkway standard, the street trees, and allows for the bike lane on the road. Into this, we have metal planter boxes with flowering evergreen shrubs and where possible climbing vines where we can. That'll be integrated into the entry steps, the entry doors and balcony railings for the live-work units facing onto and entering onto the street. So that treatment will wrap around the north corner. That treatment will wrap around into the north drive aisle. Yes, and where we have a pedestrian walkway and again planters leading to the integrated with leading to the live-work unit entries along the north side of the building. Also, the landscape screening along the north property line includes a rain garden planting strip and a row of deciduous trees quite closely spaced and a 4-foot height fence. Along the drive aisle, we see we incorporating boulder lighting for illumination along there as well as building entry lighting. Now the courtyard, the feature courtyard at the center of the whole project, in the center of the building, is providing the main focus for the outdoor landscape amenities. In the center is the open square lawn area, slightly mounded and raised above the perimeter walkway. That is surrounded by flowering trees and shrubs and raised planters, separating from the private patio areas. The generous patios are provided for the use of the ground floor unit residents, and they're screened with privacy yew hedges, as well as flowering shrubs and ground covers in those planters. Planters generally are raised concrete, segmental concrete retaining walls, planter walls, and the planting area inside them is at least 3 feet wide, often more 5 and more feet wide. So we have room for a row of the hedge screening as well as other plants below the trees. And then of course we have the trees canopying over on both sides of those planters as well. Now each patio as well also has gates that lead out into the courtyard. So from your unit you go indoor outdoor, and also from the patio into the courtyard and back and forth into the courtyard. Off the courtyard to the southwest is the children's play area, and that's targeted to small children 4 years and under. It'll include we've shown on another image, but we have a colorful play apparatus for this age group, soft rubberized ground surfacing, and seating for parents, as well as a shade tree along there in that space as well. On the other side of the courtyard, toward the northwest, are picnic areas, picnic tables for gathering and socializing, and that's adjacent to that central covered seating area, which you could use for more portable furniture, barbecue area, that sort of thing. And the storage area, the storage compounds off to the side is where you can keep some of the movable equipment and furniture. Back along to the north down is the vegetable garden area, where we have some raised veggie beds, growing beds, and supported with tool storage area, water source, and compost bins as well. As Don mentioned, going north-south off the side of the courtyard to the whole outdoor amenity space is a central trellis walkway with an overhead pergola, and that's the spine that organizes these more, let's say, active area or programmed amenity areas. And that walkway with the trellis is connected at each end to pedestrian gates, which let you out into the lane, the adjacent lane, to walk off-site. Landscape lighting is incorporated into that trellis walkway for night use. And also we have low-level lighting integrated into the planter walls, the raised planter walls, throughout the entire scheme. The last thing, I guess, along the laneway edge, we have a wrought iron style metal fence matching the ironwork on the building, or metal on the building, and that would be 6 feet high along there. That's it for landscaping. Thank you.
Maybe perhaps just a quick note on the variances. We don't, Canada can support the variances. We believe that the building height is consistent with the Northgate area plan desires, and the accessory building being zero property line just contributes to the spatial qualities of the building's amenities without taking away from the existing lane from our side of the property line. And the parking, relative to the parking, we are over-providing parking, and so our minimum parking is 101 stalls, and we were over-providing at 138. So for some, I don't understand the mathematical relationship that Lisa's given us, but apparently we're a little higher than the 40%. So I'll leave it at that, if panel has questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I will ask you one favor, if you could stop sharing. As much as I like looking at your images, I was
just trying to find the buttons here. So give me a second. Oh, here we go. There we are. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll hide that. So first question to panel members is: does anyone have any questions for staff? Shaking of heads. Okay, I actually have a question for staff. Just actually more of a clarification. The variance is because the zone allows 14 meters, but the neighborhood plan envisions 19.7 or something like that. Is that correct?
Correct. So the zoning is what dictates the allowable height. And so if you're going above what's permitted in zoning, a variance is required. But we do often look to the neighborhood plan or official community plan for guidance to see what heights are envisioned for a future.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will open it up for panel members to ask questions and provide comments to the applicant. I'm going to start with, just going through the squares here. Tony.
Thank you for the presentation. Particularly enjoyed the video. Always very, very illuminating. I'll start by saying that I think the variances are relatively minor and quite supportable, in my opinion. I like a lot of things about this project. I like what it does for the street edge. It's going to be a very lively and interesting experience for the pedestrian, particularly along Wallace. But also on the other street frontage. I think that's great. Like the live work units and the great variety of outdoor activities in the landscaping that was just presented to us in the open courtyard. Where I'm having a little bit of a challenge, though, is notwithstanding your reference to the historical context, which I had a little bit of trouble with. I don't find this building looking extremely residential in character. It's almost there, but it has a lot of the appearance to me of it's leaning more towards a commercial-looking building, and I'm not quite sure what's causing that. I think perhaps the main thing for me is the extreme emphasis on verticality. You've got the vertical elements between all the windows, emphasize the verticality. You've got the bedroom windows, the secondary windows with what looks like a spandrel panel below it to make it look like a more vertical window, again emphasizing the verticality. I just wondered if you think, is that going too far, or could you introduce a little more horizontality? Could the bedroom windows be a more square punch window, for example, so just take the edge off? Could the balconies, as I think commented on by planning, actually project rather than just be the Juliet type, which would obviously add a more residential characteristic to the building? So those are kind of things that I'm having a little bit of anxiety about, and I just wanted to care to comment on any of that.
Oh, Tony, no, these are absolutely fabulous questions, and our design team certainly beat each other up over this, over many times. We chose a vertical proportion. As I said, we were referencing sort of the variety of different sort of urban influences from around the world and things like that. When we visited, various projects around, even Vancouver, but also in Europe and things like that, we were looking at projects that were having a verticality to it and expressing itself as a street wall, but also an urban street wall with that vertical characteristics. We chose also to develop the shallower Juliet balconies and the shallower inset balconies as the first reason was mostly because the ownership group has a very deliberate management strategy. The management strategy is to try to perhaps declutter, or perhaps not allow tenants to overly clutter the street facades with barbecues and bicycles that tend to sort of find its way onto those balconies. And so our strategy with sustainability is operable windows and ventilation. And so we chose to have narrow proportion, longer height doors that are paired open at the Juliet balconies, giving a vertical look. And so it is a deliberate strategy that we have here. The commercial aspect, I can hear what you say, and I understand where you're coming from. And I agree with you, actually. It actually is a vertical aspect of some of those early urban buildings that we have seen in the downtown cores in Gastown, in Yaletown, in fact, I think even in New Westminster, as I look through older historical documents over there, where the vertical windows were narrower, taller. And we were picking up sort of not like literal history, but sort of an idea of those kind of reckonings of the past and those kinds of proportions to the future. So Tony, you're absolutely spot on your observation. I think you picked up that there is a commercial feel to it, but it's more of one of those earlier sort of historic reference of urban buildings of historical feel. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Tony?
No, I'll just process what Don has given me and see if my comfort level was assuaged, but I'll let the other members kick in here.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Next, Marie.
Yeah, hello, and thank you very much for a great presentation, very thorough, and I really appreciate the renderings. It really helps me to visualize what you're proposing. I'm really happy to see something proposed for the site. I think it's a great site, and I think your proposal really fits well with it, the shape, the form, and I'm going to differ with Tony on your whole facade, because right away I recognize the kind of European reference. Also, I think of some of the old buildings we have in our downtowns in Canada that have been actually converted back into condos. And I lived in one such as that at Edmonton, a 100-year-old building with a very tall windows. And I don't think anybody missed the balconies, so I understand what you're doing. And I don't think a residential building necessarily always has to have a balcony. I think I agree with you in the sense that they're often cluttered, people don't use them properly, they just use them for storage. And I think the design that you proposed wouldn't be suited to have a larger balcony. The Juliet balconies work well with this design. And I really like how it riffs off both the Nanaimo past or even our Canadian past in terms of the type of architecture we've had in our cities. And I think it's a great project, and that we sparked that up with a little bit of the sort of orange-colored woodwork to kind of contemporize it a bit. So I'm quite happy with that. But I do have a couple questions. First of all, with the Juliet balconies, I think the only way they really work properly is if the windows can be really fully opened. The whole purpose of them, of course, is that you're bringing the outside in the same way that you have a balcony. You can have this kind of shared interior-exterior. So I'm just wondering what kind of windows you're putting in there. Are they going to be able to be opened fully from like side to side?
Yes, and absolutely. So the depth of our Juliets are about 2 feet, 2 feet clear. And so we have our door openings at 3 feet. And so they're going to be 1'6" each of the doors that can swing right open. So you'll be able to have a 3 foot wide opening onto the opening out to the Juliet balconies. So you picked it up just perfectly. The perception will be from the unit a large opening of 3 feet, opening right out, and then side windows as well that will pop, side casing windows coming up this way. So the fresh air strategy of the building will be really, I think, nice in the building. And so you'll get the sense of if you were sitting in your living room and had the doors open, and we all know, like in Vancouver, it rains like crazy. So having that ability to open the doors and be sitting slightly inwards, but being able to open the doors and get that breeze and the fresh air coming in through, I think will be a very enjoyable experience with the units in there.
Yeah, and I think it just really keeps the building look. Somebody can add something there?
Myself is Paul Williams. I'm one of the owners here, and Maria, I'd just like to respond that one of the concepts here was sustainability. And when we were doing our due diligence in the Nanaimo market, we saw, and I think you must be seeing now, a number of buildings come forward with air conditioning. And that was something that just shocked us, given our climate in general. I think it's very much because of the cost of mechanical equipment is dropping to allow air conditioning. It doesn't benefit our planet one bit. And so there was a concerted effort with our mechanical design to allow sufficient airflow to hit the energy modeling targets that we're required to do in code, and then some. So that was a very concerted effort by the design team and ownership when looking at the windows and the airflow for natural cooling and not using greenhouse gases for the rest of the time with the building. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So one of my other questions actually concerns the work-live spaces. Are you seeing these as retail or business units as well as living spaces?
I think it could be both and so I know that sounds like a vague question, but they are set up so that someone could run a small entrepreneurial business in one of them. So we see that the front end of it, you still have the kitchen, which is going to be linear along one side of the unit. But the rear office or the rear bedroom could be an office. We are planning it with a window that could be just like somebody's office window that looks into either the living room if you're residential, or the workspace that you're actually in there. I think they'll be really unique.
Yeah, we actually have a few buildings in Nanaimo downtown with these kinds of workspaces, and some of them have transitioned towards some seem to be homes and some seem to be businesses. One of the things that concerned me, though, when I was looking at your plan, each of these units is accessible by stairs.
Except for the north one. The north one, we purposely did not put stairs on it, so they get access directly off the sidewalk.
Right. Well, my concern with that is it would make those units inaccessible to anybody with mobility issues, without having some sort of ramp or sloped, some sort of way of getting in there. So I'm not sure how the city deals with that, if they have requirements for that. The businesses have to be accessible, I believe. Anything new has to be. And the other thing is, it looked like in your plan that you have a little gate just before the door.
Correct.
What's the purpose of that?
It's more for what we sort of see in Yaletown and things like that. You know, we've been sort of coining the word defensible space. Because the door is set back in from the street.
Oh, I couldn't tell. Maybe I was reading that wrong. I thought maybe your door came forward, was more closer to the facade, and then there was a bit of a setback.
Yeah, we have a glass facade which will have sliding doors which will open, and then there will be a return where the door is set back in, so the door can swing outwards. And so what we wanted to do is set a little gate there, so that when it comes to people at night, they're not sort of sitting in your inside right up to your door. You could sit on the steps, but you could sit on the...
A good point here.
No, that's a good question. That was plan number one.
It looks a little awkward, like if somebody's coming up to approach that place, they have to open that gate first, then knock on the door or open the door. Anyway, that was just a little point. I'm more concerned about the accessibility access to those units, and I'm wondering if that's something that needs to be considered in this design, because if they are going to be used for businesses, people aren't going to be able to get in there. I know the other workspace units that I've seen here, I believe they're all accessible on the front. And again, speaking of accessibility, have you included any accessible or adaptable units in this design?
All our units are a little bit larger than the typical, so all our bathrooms will have the clear dimension that is required to make aspects of the unit accessible. So we'll have the clear dimensional areas for the bathrooms. Our units are 20 feet wide typically, so we've got a lot of space in there. So the principles of adaptable units are all ingrained in every big unit that we have.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good location for people with mobility issues, because they can get around quite easily in that area of town. So
yeah, I would agree.
Good to add to that. And just a final note, I just wanted to say thank you for the landscape design too. I really like the way it echoes the classical aspects of the building with the symmetry and so on. So thanks.
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maureen. Tyler.
Thanks, Charles, and thanks, Don, for the excellent and thorough presentation. Really appreciate it. And just before I forget, not related to the design, but just thank you so much for including 3 bedroom units in the development. Not very common, but greatly appreciated. Again, outside the scope of this panel, but something that our community does need, so that's great. I won't take too long. I just would say that I do agree with Tony. I think this is a great project, and really glad to see coming here and getting some attractive buildings, but I do agree with Tony, and I think that actually, I'm by no means an architect or a designer, so, but I did see that staff comment around the balcony and thought that made sense from my perspective. As someone that's not too far removed from university days with friends in Victoria, going down there many weekends, I can firmly say that balconies are very well used. And nice going on in the summertime. So, and I think, you know, if there's clutter concerns, I would assume there's probably other mechanisms through it's all rental that can be put in place to solve that issue. So just from a design perspective, I really appreciate Tony's comments. They sort of articulated my thought, and I did see that staff comment around balcony and thought that it would make sense. The other comments I sort of thought was just preference on the staff is regarding the chain link fence. If there's some additional design there, that would be great. I think, you know, chain link fence it is very practical, but if there's something with a little bit of a nicer design, always appreciate it. So thank you. All in all, really happy to see this project move along. I think between this and the TELUS building up front of Wallace, you really start to see the development of the streetscape that it's very active and live, and it's bringing people downtown, having them live downtown. So great stuff. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Kate?
Okay, very good. Well, first, thank you very much for your presentation. Like everyone said, it was very thorough, and you helped us understand your project very well. Thank you. First, I think you've done a great job in citing your building and really creating that street level pedestrian experience, and I think the sort of overhangs really contribute to that at that level. And I'm really happy with the detail you've done along Wallace Street and up Campbell Street. I think that's really successful, and that it has allowed you to have this backyard courtyard, which I think is a wonderful space you provided for the tenants. And I appreciate the consideration of the variety of amenities, having gardens and kind of open spaces and something to play. And I find it interesting too that you have those live-work units along the street. I think that it's nice to have that kind of variety in the buildings we see. So great on that. So then, I'm the landscape architect on the team, so I'm going to speak a little bit more. So all of that said, what I would love to see, like there is great amenity space, but I would love to see more plants and vegetation. I think the landscape architect is really limited on the available space, and I'd love to see you try to explore where you have opportunity to increase the size of your planters or planting strips. My main sort of concern is along that laneway, that it is one of the most exposed parts regarding sunlight. If you get the full afternoon sun along there, I think your project would benefit from sort of more plantings right along the laneway, so that you start to kind of soften all the hardscaping and the heat, and we'll have a bit more dappled lighting. I believe you have room for that, and that would be worth considering. I do appreciate that lovely pergola you put in. I think that's wonderful, and maybe you utilize it in some places to have vines, and that will also help with that softening and dappling and cooling of that sort of back space. Also, I appreciate that you've considered children, but I would like you to think about what play could be. Play doesn't have to be rubber surfacing and an off-the-shelf kind of structure. Children, especially the age group you're targeting, can happily be immersed with just nature and more natural elements. So I think, given that it's a hot spot back here, I would reconsider that rubber matting if it's a possibility. There are other fall surfacings that are available for you to consider, whether the engineered wood fiber, which would be a less hot and material to include, and you might think about just rocks and logs and more plants for the kids actually. And I say that because knowing that there's a schoolyard very close to you, and that the kids who will live in this space will have access to that schoolyard after school hours, so there's a lot more physical climbing and athletic play there. And you're so close to Mateo Sutton Park, which has the new playground. So yeah, I'd encourage you to think about it more like a garden space for kids versus equipment and rubber matting. And I like children's play spaces, so that's the focus of mine. But I think the plant palette is good and very suitable for your design. And then, what was my other thought? Oh, a couple of things, like you might think about that northeast corner where you have the refuge storage, and above it, you may want to think about having plants that can sort of soften that edge or come and hang down, because I think it's just sort of a wall with doors. Is that correct when you look up that north lane?
Yeah, we have, well, exactly, that's there. You're talking about over our garbage refuse area?
Yeah. So you could potentially, I mean, it's a thing. Anywhere I just would encourage you, I'd love to see more plants and vegetation where you can sneak it in. And then lastly, speaking to Wallace Street, I believe you're quite limited by the engineering standards, but if there was any way to carve out a bit more space for those trees along that, I think those trees would benefit greatly. So whether it was just a little bit bigger area for the tree that you can have plants under as well. We know the more space we can give to trees, especially street trees in an intense urban environment, the better they will do. I recognize you might be constrained by the engineering standards, but maybe there are some, exceptions can be made, who knows. But like that would be, in my opinion, better as a long strip boulevard planted with trees, but I don't know if that's an option for you. And then, lastly, I'm sort of not brought up yet, but the entrance off of Campbell Street, it doesn't have a cover, or does it?
It has a cover that projects maybe about 18 inches, but the glass facade is also set back in.
Okay.
So it's actually more like a 3 to 4 foot.
Okay. Yeah, I see why you don't have the overhang like along Wallace, because you don't quite have the space for it, but it feels like it's missing to me. So I don't know, the architect maybe might have another opinion, but just when I learned that when you go around the corner, you're like, oh, that's the entry, but it doesn't have that warmth of that kind of wood overhang that I enjoyed along Wall Street, and kind of felt missing. But anyway, that's my only last comment, I think, for now, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, we appreciate that. Keith, if you have something.
No, thanks. I think those are good comments, and I see what you mean about the west face there. We're trying to keep it kind of open so you can see in and out, like not a solid fence, so the wrought iron fence. So, but I agree, it would use more kind of shade there when it's needed. And we will try to do as much. We'll look at getting more planting in if our planters can be a little wider, that sort of thing. And the children's play area, that's a good take on that. I think that's easy to address, and we can reconsider that a bit.
I think that kind of play.
Yeah, a little bit different character in there, and maybe more planting will be better there at the edge anyway. Oh, great. Thanks.
It reminded me, I did have one more comment, Charles, sorry. Just that building, your amenity building at the back. I don't have a problem with it being the variance for it, but it does feel like it needs to be softened somehow, whether texturally or if you looked at vines or a green roof or something like that, especially from the laneway side, let's see.
Something that can be considered,
Yeah. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's much pleasure to hear from you.
Yeah, well, one thing, Kate, we are planting vines on the trellis.
Okay, wonderful.
It's a little harder right at that spot, but we could maybe work them in there as well. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Kevin.
Thanks, Charles, and thank you, Don and Keith, for the presentation. It was a very, very nice presentation. I particularly enjoyed when I scanned the 3D mapping visualization. That was very, very nicely done. We should see that on every project. It really helped to bring everything together. I think the project is very well done. I think the form and character and siting of the building is spot on. I think you conformed very well to the urban design guidelines, and I support your variances. Obviously, it's going to be a building that's quite a bit higher than what's in the neighborhood, but obviously the increased density and keeping under the floor-area ratio is probably more important. I was going to the question about the parking, the variance, but being that you're providing much more parking spaces, I think the way people are moving towards smaller cars and electric cars anyways, I definitely support the parking variance as well. Most of my questions are probably going to be directed towards Keith. I just will jump in with the form and character and say I think I'm more, even though I appreciate Tony and Tyler's comment about a residential feel for the building, I think this building definitely falls within your urban fabric of our downtown area, and I accept your rationale, Don, regarding how you're drawing influence from European cities and stuff, and what Maria mentioned about the buildings, a lot of buildings in Europe and areas like that, converting them into residential units, and even in Edmonton, like what Maria said. So I would side with your rationale on the form and character of the building. I think it fits very well. I agree with Tyler's comment and staff's comment regarding the fence detail on the north side of the building. You could put in a nicer finish there. I'm struggling a little bit with the lawn area in the courtyard and whether or not there's ways possibly to make that add to that probably. I'm not sure how you would do that, but I listened to your rationale regarding people out there exercising, yoga and whatnot, but I think if you talk to a lot of people, they wouldn't want to be out there in the yard, kind of in a fishbowl with people looking out their windows and stuff, and they probably would prefer to be in one of the amenity spaces inside the building to do that. So did you give any other thought to how to do other things to do with that lawn area, Keith?
Well, we did think, in a way, it's a relief to have just a nice, clean lawn, and maybe it's emphasized. Maybe we're thinking about COVID a little too much, but it's just everyone's walking to the lawn spaces now and looking for that extra kind of distance. So I like the symmetry of it in terms of the courtyard. And of course, it's ringed by these quite a few trees, flowering trees, really nice vegetation around it. So it won't be visible always from everywhere above and that. So I like the idea of a nice lawn. It's slightly mounded, but it's fairly flat, more or less a flat space. And it has a certain flexibility that the other spaces won't have. So things like children's play, I think, that'll be, if the playground's number one stop, that'll be the next stop, because you can let little kids run around on the grass and you can watch them in there, and it's very workable for that sort of thing. And just for going out, if a couple or a small family or an individual to go, and I think you would lay on that grass, like in a park, either on a mat or on the edge. It's slightly raised to get the soil depth. We're going to have a good soil depth, so we can actually have good grass, real grass. And so there'd be a lip at the edge that you can sit on that as well. So I think it's quite central to it, and also looking very good from above with the kind of the mixed trees kind of overhanging it around the edges. And then I don't know if you noticed on the 3D, it shows up the amenity building at the back of the courtyard is quite nice as another element with the trellis that sort of frames frames the look of it and has a formality that I think the square lawn, like in a way it is a square, meant like an urban square, but it's in grass and solid material. So I like it. I didn't want to mess it up with play equipment or try to make it the one feature that would kind of take over, like a play feature that would take over it or whatever. You know, it's kind of more flexible and very strong visually. Is a kind of a free space.
So around the perimeter of it, there is raised like a retaining wall for seating, is that correct?
Yeah, because of the soil depth. This is on the slab of the parking, right?
Yeah.
So these are on slab landscaping. So the planters around screening the patios are about 30 inches to 3 feet high, 24 to 3 feet plus a little extra high.
Okay.
So, but then right at the edge of the grass is also 16 to 18 inches, or maybe about 16 inches above the walkway. So they have a little curved lip there too, which is seating height.
Yeah, that wasn't, I couldn't pick that up on your landscape plan, and I was curious, but obviously having a lot of seating outside would be in that area would obviously be very desirable, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Can you explain the purpose of the landscape maintenance paths? They're accessible from obviously the back or the west area of the building. The one near Campbell Street, is that meant to be accessible from the sidewalk on Campbell Street too?
Yeah, I guess they're for service vehicles from the lane.
Okay.
You would pull in there, you know, the landscape contractor, maintenance contractor could pull in there and access the landscaping, but rather than parking on the street or parking in entrance parking.
Okay, and they're
both things.
Use that as an exit to get up to the park, the school, and everything too.
And that's the other reason is that it's an exit from the back door of the second floor of our building to directly go out to either the courtyard or the amenities on the courtyard or to the up Campbell Street. Yes, either the second floor or up Campbell.
Yeah, and the one near to on the north side, the maintenance area there, that is only really accessible through the communal gardens. Is that correct?
Not really. No, not really. That one is more just the reason why it's down a little bit more, just in terms of elevational difference. The courtyard is a little bit higher, and it's probably about almost 3 feet higher than the lane is at that point. So we didn't want to create a large mass up against, basically over our waste management area, our waste area. It just would elevate a block, and then we would have a PFT sitting next to it, which would then also stand up. Like that PFT has to be at lane elevation, or just a slab thickness above lane elevation. So we didn't want all these sort of elements popping up where we have septic problems and people hiding behind an elevated area next to the PMT. I think that was more the drive, is so we didn't have a septic issue.
Okay, thanks, Don. My last question is, I guess if anything regarding the siting and the character of the project, is the building that doesn't necessarily relate very well to the street corner. And have you given any thought to possibly on that corner where there's a little bit of a landscape that they're incorporating public art or something there to relate to the corner, to relate possibly to the site, the history of the site? Most people have lived in the Nine, been in the Clinton before, so just curious if you've given that any thought and what your thoughts on that would be.
I'm doing my best to twist arms of folks who. So I would love to see in our next level. I would. We have looked at the architectural lighting and how things will be happening, and you may have noticed when you looked at some of the renderings that we have some plaques that have the numbers of the live work units. And I think those are opportunities to introduce small graphics on those plaques to sort of key people into things. So that, I think, would be where we'd love to head with it. And Yeah, I have to tell the ownership that, in my next design session.
Yeah, that would probably be my only recommendation. If there's a way you can relate the building to the corner by introducing public art to the corner. It is something that we do encourage, especially regarding the history of Nanaimo, and I think you need there to incorporate something on that corner that can really showcase that corner because of what you're doing with the sidewalk and the bulb effect on the sidewalk. I think you can do something very unique there. So that's really my only recommendation. I think you have a very nice project here, and thank you for the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. I will, I'm not going to add very much actually, everything's been covered. This is the benefit I have of going last. But I do want to just chime in, I guess, or mention the one comment, Tony's comment, and Tyler's echoing of that comment. I actually came at it from the other direction, which was when I saw the design, I sort of recognized where it was coming from, and I thought it was a very interesting take, basically creating a new building that you could almost imagine was a renovation, kind of like what Marie said, that it was a renovation of an old commercial building that had been here for a while. So I think it does hold up very well if you approach it from that respect. And I think it does have a commercial aspect to it, but I think that's actually working well, working in its favor, and it blends well with the use of materials and the steel and the steel balconies, et cetera, et cetera. It's all, I think it's all very nicely done. So I'll echo some of the other panel members who commented that they thought that was working very well. I did write down something else and I can't find it. It's to do with the lawn, but that's okay. I think that's already been covered. So yes, very nice presentation, very nice project. Thank you very much. So I'm going to do what I do. I'm going to say worst, not best. I'm going to try and frame some of the comments that we made that I think were recommendations, and I will get yay or nay on whether those are the right recommendations. So I have written down in order. Marie, you had the comment, I think it was a recommendation to consider increasing the number of lift-work units with level access or accessible entries. Did you want?
Yeah, I'm not an architect, so I'm not sure how you would do that, but if there's a way to make them accessible or ramp them somehow, that would be appreciated. I think for all of them actually, but if it's not possible, and they're allowed to be inaccessible as businesses, I don't know, to the south of the city. It's by a lot of building standards there.
Yeah, and I would echo that comment because I know from first-hand experience that it can be a challenge if you do try and get a non-residential use in one of those spaces. You likely will get hit with the accessible questions. So it can be a challenge, yes. So Kate, I wrote down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I don't know if all of these are going to be recommendations, but I'll read them out. So increase the planting along the laneway edge. Consider natural elements in the children's play area, or natural play elements. Consider planting over the garbage storage area. Consider increased planting space or area for the street trees. And I think that was particular to Wallace, is that right? Yeah. And consider, and I just said softening the amenity building.
Yeah, does anyone else have issues with the amenity building? No?
Well, it's not that I have issues with it. I did notice that it's in stark contrast to the rest of the building. Its use, its materiality, and its color. It's the black, not the white. So it does kind of stand out Yeah.
Purple.
Yeah.
Okay. It's actually much lighter than it actually appears in reality.
But I do think, like, hand in hand with the increased planting along the laneway edge, you know, there's landscape treatments that could help screen and soften that building.
So I would say the one recommendation about the planting of the garbage refuge could be removed and just included in that overall kind of increased planting.
So you could say increased planting along laneway edge and other areas
Where
possible.
Yeah. I just think, like, yeah, anywhere you can fit more plants, and the better your project will ultimately be.
Okay. And then, Kevin, you've got, well, I've written down, consider adding a public art feature at the Wallace Campbell corner. Yep. Okay, and then
Also, I supported Tyler's recommendation regarding the fence detail on the north side.
Did they not? I thought they changed that. Did you change that in your presentation?
We are fine with changing it, I believe. The original rationale with the chain link was, you know, if a future development comes along, maybe that fence gets taken down, right? So.
I just thought you had said wrought iron or something, so you had already.
They're on the lane, yeah.
Yeah, addressed that.
And we're good with the north if that's a recommendation. Yeah, thank you.
so that would be, and I know it was a staff comment, so consider using similar fence wrought iron, it's not wrought iron, but the similar fence style along the north edge as along the lane.
Yeah.
Okay, and are we okay with not making a recommendation about the residential character, form and character? Do we need to debate that internally, or Tony?
I think it's pretty clear, Tony and I were the minority.
Yeah, I mean, no, it doesn't bother anybody else. I must confess, I understand the intellectual rationale, but I'm not quite buying it 100%. But if everybody else is comfortable, then I'll shut up and go with the majority here.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Or natural play is 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so it looks like we have 7 recommendations. I can read them all again, or if everybody's okay with me just sorting it out, then
Yeah.
so I'd be looking for a motion. We didn't really discuss the variances, so does anyone have any comments or concerns about the height variance?
Okay with all the variances?
Okay.
Me too.
So I'd be looking for a motion for accepting the application as presented with support for the variances and the 7 recommendations that I will work out with staff. Kevin?
Yes, I make a motion to accept the application as presented with those recommendations and support for the height variance and the rear setback variance.
Okay, thank you. Seconder? Marie, thank you. And any further discussion, comments? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? All right. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
I really would like to thank the panel. It's been a pleasure throughout this whole process.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Very nice presentation, Don and Keith.
Okay, well, thank you. Comments, and thank you. We take them with full heart.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going back to our agenda quickly. We have item 5, other business. I don't think we have any other business tonight. Nope. And items, item 6.
Yes, if you wish.
Item 6, thank you. Item 6 is adjournment. So we are done for the evening. Thank you.
Charles,
Yes, Kate?
after we adjourn, can I just say one quick thing to staff? Is that okay?
Is it about this project?
No.
Good, okay.
Just let me,
Turn off the recording.
yeah, let me make sure that we stop the live stream and the recording, and then, yeah. We are adjourned.